Here in this universe, we have 92 naturally occurring elements. In these naturally occurring elements, only few elements like helium, neon, argon, krypton, and xenon, radon. Only these elements, radon is a radioactive element. It's not a naturally occurring element, it is as a byproduct of in the nuclear reactions. So except radon, all the remaining elements, you know that in the name of inert gases or noble gases. Only these elements exist as atoms in a free state. That means you can find a helium atom in an isolated state, a neon atom in an isolated state, an argon atom in an isolated state, a xenon atom as an isolated state. Except these elements, all the remaining 92 elements, we will not and never find them in their atomic state. But we can get or identify them in a molecular state. For example, if you take a sample of hydrogen gas, you will find hydrogen in the form of H2. H2 means two hydrogen atoms bind together as a molecule and exist as a molecular state. Exist in a molecular state. Similarly, oxygen, it will exist as O2 or it can exist as O3. Similarly, nitrogen will exist as N2. Chlorine will exist as Cl2. So all these are gases. Fluorine as F2. All these are in gaseous state. In solid state we have P4, S8, etc. But except inert gases, no other element in this universe will exist as an atom. When they were not exist as an atom, why the name atom arised? Because in normal conditions they exist as molecules, but at the time of chemical reactions, these molecules will dissociate into atoms, and a fraction of seconds they exist as atoms and rearrange themselves to form a new compounds or compound molecules. For example, if hydrogen is reacting with chlorine, it gives us 2HCl. If you observe this equation, you will feel that hydrogen is reacting with chlorine to give HCl. But it is not true, because a molecule will never directly take part into a chemical reaction. A molecule will never directly take part into a chemical reaction. Before take part into a chemical reaction, this molecule will split up into two atoms. And this molecule is also split up into two atoms. These atoms rearrange to give this HCl. It means, except inert gases, the remaining elements will have atomic state, but it is very unstable, and a very little while, only during chemical reaction, they exist in atomic form. In all other conditions, they will exist as a molecules. These molecules may belong atoms of the same element like this, or with other atoms belonging to other elements, HCl, H2O, NH3, CO2, H2SO4, like that. There is a variety of combinations to form millions of molecules together. but they will never exist as atoms just like those inert gases or noble gases. Now the question is, why noble gases or inert gases are existing in the form of atoms, whereas other elements were unable to exist? They can exist only in the form of molecule. What is the reason? For any reason or for any reaction or any property of an element will depend upon its electronic configuration, arrangement of its electrons in the different atomic orbitals, particularly in the last energy level. That last energy level we call it as valency shell. So the property of an element is decided by the arrangement of electrons in the last energy level or valency shell. The valency electronic configuration can only decide the property of an element. So here, the reason behind the existence of these noble gases or inert gases in atomic state can also be explained in terms of the electronic configuration. If we keenly observe the electronic configuration of these inert gases, we can observe that helium electronic configuration is found to be 1s2. Neon is, in addition to helium configuration, we have 2s2, 2p6. Argon 1s2, 2s2, 2p6 up to this. This is neon's configuration. In addition to neon configuration, it will have 3s2, 3p6. Similarly, krypton electronic configuration is 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, 3s2, 3p6. This is up to argon configuration. In addition to argon configuration, you will have additional electrons in 3d10 and 4s2, 4p6. Similarly, for xenon, in addition to krypton configuration, we'll have the total krypton configuration, we are writing it as Kr, 4d10, 5s2, 5p6. Now we have already discussed that the properties will depend upon valence electronic configuration. So here the valence shell is this, here the valence shell is this, here the valence shell is this, here it is this, and here it is this. If we notify or observe the electronic configuration of these elements in their valence shell, we'll find a common thing in all these four elements except helium. Helium has only one energy level, that is first energy level. The first energy level can accommodate only 2 electrons, that's why it has 1s2 configuration. So except helium, all the remaining elements, neon, argon, krypton and xenon, will have 8 electrons in their valency shell. This 8 electrons electronic configuration is known as octet. Octet. Having 8 electrons in the valency shell is said to be octet. Basing on that, a theory was proposed, which we commonly known as octet rule. According to this octet rule, any atom is stable if it has octet electronic configuration in their valency shell. So 8 electrons for any atom, the maximum number of electrons that can be accommodated in the valency shell, that can be present in the valency shell is only 8. No element will have more than 8 electrons in its valency shell, whatever its atomic number. The maximum electrons that can be accommodated in the valency shell is 8. Those elements which are having that maximum number are said to be stable. And this statement, which states that the element with 8 electrons in its valency shell will have more stability, or the other elements will take part into bonding or forming molecules to get this octet electronic configuration. This phenomena is called as octet rule. Octet rule means an element is stable only when it contains 8 electrons in its valency shell. Those elements which are having less than 8 electrons will try to get this 8 electron configuration by losing or gaining or by mutual sharing. On that process, 2 or more elements will bind together as a molecule. By that way, those elements in that molecule will acquire this octet electronic configuration. Cosell and Lewis, two different scientists, they proposed this octet rule, and he proposed that according to this Cosell-Lewis theory, any element which is having 8 electrons in its valency shell is stable. Having 8 electrons in its valency shell is said to be octet, and this rule is said to be octet rule. The other elements which are not having 8 electrons in their valency shell will get this 8 electrons configuration by losing of electrons, some elements by gaining of electrons, and some elements by mutual sharing of electrons. Now let us verify how they are getting this octet configuration by taking some examples. Now if I take element sodium, this sodium atomic number is 11. So its electronic configuration is 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, 3s1. Now here sodium has 1 electron in its valency shell, but 8 electrons in its penultimate shell, that is n-1 shell. Now sodium gets this valence electronic configuration if it is not having this orbital or that electronic configuration. So now sodium has tendency to lose that electron so that the remaining electrons in its valency shell will become 8. So to get this octet configuration, sodium has tendency to lose that electron. Coming to another element called chlorine, its atomic number is 17. Its electronic configuration is 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, 3s2, 3p5. Here in chlorine we have a valency shell which contains 7 electrons. That means it has 1 electron less than an inert gas. So this element has tendency to gain an electron provided if other element is ready to give it. So when these two elements with a different electronic configuration are coming in contact with each other, have different tendencies. One element has tendency to lose electron or donate electron, other element has tendency to gain electron or accept an electron. So if that is happened here, for example, if sodium loses 1 electron, what happens? In sodium, its nucleus contains 11 positive charges. 11 positive charges are present in its nucleus. 11 positive charges. Outside nucleus, 2 electrons are present in the first energy level, 8 electrons are present in the second energy level, 1 electron is present in third energy level. Now, here this electron was lost by this. So that this will become, the second energy level will become valency shell and it contains 8 electrons. But here after losing that electron, the remaining electrons are only 10. But in nucleus you have 11 positive charges. Outside nucleus you have only 10 electrons. Before that you will have 11 and 11. 11 positive charges, 11 negative charges. After losing that electron, it has only 10 electrons and 11 positive charges. So because of that, 1 unit positive charge will arise on sodium. Now chlorine has tendency to gain electron because it has 1 electron less than argon. To get octet configuration, chlorine requires 1 more electron. So now chlorine has tendency to take electron. So the electron that was released by sodium is taken by chlorine and it will be converted as Cl-. So if one electron is transferred from sodium to chlorine, sodium is converting as a positive ion, chlorine is converting as a negative ion. Because of that, a strong electrostatic force of attraction will develop between these two oppositely charged ions to form NaCl. Here, the octet configuration for the two ions is gained or get by transfer of electron from one atom to other. If two elements get the octet configuration by transfer of electrons, one or two electrons, that is called as electrovalency, and the bond thus formed is said to be electrovalent bond or ionic bond. Electrovalent bond or ionic bond. Here two types of ways that an atom get octet configuration. One is transfer of electron. Transfer of electron from one atom to other. If octet electronic configuration is get the elements, if got the octet electronic configuration by transfer of electrons from one atom to other, that is called as electrovalency. Electrovalency. The bond thus formed is said to be electrovalent bond. The bond is said to be electrovalent bond because the force that binds the two oppositely charged species is electrostatic force of attraction. That's why that force is said to be electrovalent bond. And this bond is formed after formation of two oppositely charged ions. That's why this bond is also called as ionic bond. This bond is called as ionic bond. Remember, the transfer of electron from one atom to other atom will take place only the electronegativity of two bonded atoms is greater than 1.7. This is the condition. Just a simple electronic configuration is not sufficient to transfer of electron. The transfer of electron will take place only in between two atoms if their electronegativity values difference is more than 1.7. Then only transfer of electron is possible. Then only ionic bond is possible. So this is the fundamental condition for the formation of an ionic bond. Favorable conditions for the formation of ionic bond. Just now we observed the formation of ionic bond between sodium and chlorine. Favorable conditions. What are the conditions favorable for the formation of ionic bond? The fundamental condition and most important condition is the electronegativity difference between the two bonded atoms to form an ionic bond their electronegativity difference must be more than 1.7. This is the main character. And other favorable conditions if we want to discuss. The favorable conditions which are favorable, the conditions which are favorable for the formation of a cation and anion separately are favorable for the formation of an ionic bond, because in ionic bond one cation and anion is essential to form an ionic bond. So ionic bond is present in between two oppositely charged species, that is, one is positive species and other one is negative species. Positive species is said to be a cation, negative species is said to be anion. So the favorable conditions for the formation of ionic bond is nothing but the favorable conditions that are favorable for the formation of anion and cation. Let us discuss the favorable conditions. What are the favorable conditions for the formation of a cation? So, favorable conditions, cation. A positive ion, cation, is formed when an atom loses one electron. So, any atom can lose electron if its lost electron is least attracted by the nucleus. That means the electron which is to be removed should be leastly attracted by nucleus. Nucleus will attract all the electrons present in its atom. But this attractive force, nuclear attractive force, is more on the electrons which are closer to it. As we move away from the nucleus, nuclear attraction over the lost electron will decreases. That means atoms with large size can easily lose an electron. So, to form a positive ion, atom with large size is favorable to form a cation. First one. Second one, the amount of energy that required to remove an electron from an atom is said to be ionization potential. So, the atoms with low ionization potential values, obviously large size atoms will have low ionization potential. So, the elements with low ionization potential can easily form a cation. Similarly, less positive cations can easily be formed by more positive cations. That means a unipositive ion can easily be formed than a dipositive. Dipositive ion can easily be formed than a tripositive. For example, if you take Na plus, Mg plus 2, Al plus 3, the less positive and sodium ion can easily be formed than magnesium, than aluminium. So, less positive ions can easily form a cation. Less positive charge cations. Less positive charge cations can easily be formed. Less positive charge cations can easily be formed than high positive charge cations. So, the important factors that required for the formation of a positive ion is the atom must have low ionization potential, large atomic size, and low charge on ion. Now, come to the favorable conditions for the formation of anion. Favorable conditions for the formation of anions, quite opposite to this. Here, an atom can lose electron easily when it have large size. Here, to form a negative ion, it has to accept an electron. Any atom can accept electron only when its atomic size is less. So, less atomic size is favorable condition for the formation of an ion. Less atomic size is favorable condition. Now, to attract the electron from outside, it should have more electronegative. So, the atom with more electronegativity can easily form an ion. Atom with small size can easily form an ion, and an atom with high electronegativity can easily form an ion. And here and in positive case and negative case, less charged ions can easily formed than more negatively charged anions. Less negatively charged anions can easily be formed than more negatively charged anions. So these are the favorable conditions for the formation of anion and cation respectively. If once the two bonded atoms will have the particular characters which we are discussed, the atom which is having large in size, low ionization potential, and having smaller charge on its cation, it can easily form a cation. Similarly, atom which is smaller in size and having high electronegativity and lower negative charge can easily be formed an ion. If such two atoms are in contact with each other, an ionic bond can easily be formed between those two atoms. So, the favorable conditions which are favorable for the formation of anion and cation separately for the two bonded atoms are the only favorable conditions for the formation of ionic bond, because formation of ionic bond will take place between two oppositely charged species, that is in between anion and cation. If once the anion and cation are formed, there is no boundary or there is no restriction for the formation of an ionic bond. So the main task in the formation of ionic bond is the formation of anion and cation. So those factors which are favorable for the formation of cation for one atom, anion for the other bonded atom, the same conditions are the favorable conditions for the formation of ionic bond. Ionic compounds. General properties of ionic compounds. Generally, ionic bond is a strong bond. It's the force of attraction which binds the oppositely charged ions is electrostatic force of attraction. So, it is a strong bond. It strongly binds the oppositely species together. Moreover, this bond is non-directional bond. That means, in NaCl crystal, each Na plus ion is surrounded by 6 Cl minus ions, one in the front and other in the back side, and each Cl minus ion is surrounded by 6 Na plus ions like this. So each ion is surrounded by oppositely charged ions. No specific bond is formed between any two oppositely charged species, because there is a possibility of bond between these two, these two, these two, these two, and this and backside also. So there is no specific bond. These attractive forces are completely arranged. That's why ionic compounds are generally, they are in solid state with high melting points. So ionic compounds are in solid state with high melting points. Next. Just now we discussed that there is no direction. This bond is non-directional bond. So it cannot exhibit or cannot show isomerism. Isomerism is a fundamental property of covalent compounds. With same molecular formula, if two or more compounds are possible to form with same molecular formula, that phenomena is known as isomerism. This isomerism is possible when the bond is directional bond. Covalent bonds are directional bonds. In a particular direction, the bond will form. But in the case of ionic bonds, since they are non-directional bonds, they cannot exhibit the isomerism. And ionic compounds, they are soluble in polar solvents, insoluble in non-polar solvents. For example, NaCl, if we take NaCl, there is a strong electrostatic force of attraction between sodium and chlorine. To convert into liquid state, you have to heat it to nearly 90 degrees centigrade, 900 degrees centigrade, then only it will melt and convert it into a molten state or liquid state. But the same NaCl, if you dissolve in water at room temperature itself, it ionizes to give Na plus and Cl minus ions. So ionic compounds are soluble in polar solvents like water, because in polar solvents you will have a negatively charged end and positively charged end. For example, if you take H2O molecule, in H2O molecule, oxygen is bonded with hydrogen like this. Here you have partial negative charge, here you will have partial positive charges. So this bond, this molecule will be like this. In a center you will have negative charge and end you have positive charge. So water molecules will surround Na plus ion like this, so that negatively charged end will closer to sodium, and in the case of chlorine side, the positive end will close to chlorine like this. Because of this, the bond between sodium and chlorine will weaken and it ionizes as two separate ions. These ions are surrounded by water molecules. This is called as solvation. Grouping of or coagulation of solvent molecules around a solute ion is said to be solvation. So solvated ions will form. Here chlorine, in the case of chlorine, the same water molecules will surround chlorine like this, positive ends towards chlorine. Because of that solvation, this ionic compound is ionizable, soluble in polar solvents. If it is a solvent, is a non-polar, the solubility is not possible. Next, since they are in ionized state, in molten state or in aqueous solutions, ionic compounds are in liquid state. In their liquid state, each ion behaves an independent unit and they move in all the directions. Because in fused state and in aqueous solutions, these ionic compounds will act as good conductors of electricity. In fused state or in solid state, they behave as a bad conductors or non-conductors. But in liquid state, that is, in their molten state or in their aqueous solutions, they act as good conductors of electricity. So these are the general properties of ionic compounds.